What's up, guys? It's Creomancer here, and today, instead of playing video games like what I do a lot, I also am going to be featuring another one of my hobbies, which is Magic the Gathering. A collectible and trading card game that has been around since the early 90s. Way before I was born, but still, a great game nonetheless. Today I am featuring my favorite deck, which is an Aristocrats deck. Green-black sacrifice, and it is going to be a little less meta, modern, but it's going to be fun. There's a lot of interaction in this deck that most people don't see. So one of the first cards I'm featuring is Viscera Seer. Let's see if I can zoom in for you real quick. Alright, so Viscera Seer, even though the camera is a little dark, is a 1-drop, 1/1 vampire wizard that has the ability to sacrifice a creature and scry one. I run 2 of them in the deck. And also on the 1 mana cost creatures list, we have Blisterpod. As my little sister often calls it, the undisputed King of Eldrazi. It is a 1-drop, 1/1 devoid that, when it dies, you create a 1/1 token that can be sacrificed to itself to create a colorless mana. I run 3 of these. Because who doesn't need an extra body, you know? You can block with it, and if you block, then it dies, you get another one. Alright, now for 1 mana removal, we have Fatal Push. Of course, right? Who doesn't run Fatal Push? Destroy target creature with CMC of 2 or less, and if you have Revolt, something's left your battlefield, destroy something with 4 or less. Also, I run Tragic Slip. The Morbid trigger is not very hard to get in this deck, because a lot of times you have a creature on the battlefield that'll make you sacrifice a creature at the beginning of your upkeep anyway. So that's a pretty easy thing to get in this deck. Next, I have the 2-drops. I run 1 Cryptolith Rite. And just for those that doesn't know what it does, I am going to be posting this deck also on tappedout.net as soon as possible. It is a 2-drop enchantment that says creatures you control have the ability tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So it turns all of your creatures, including creature tokens, into mana dorks. Can be very handy in this deck. Next, I run 1 Bloodthrone Vampire, which is a 2-drop vampire. Sacrifice a creature, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn, and it has a base power and toughness of 1/1. I only need 1, because a lot of times I have other sacrifice outlets available that are a little bit better in my perspective, like Viscera Seer. Next, I run 2 Malira Sylvok Outcast. This is both a utility creature against modern decks that run Infect, as well as a creature that allows for 1 infinite combo in this deck. The infinite combo of this deck is not the main win con, but it is an alternate win con if you get stuck. Alright, next, I run 3 Zulaport Cutthroats. It is a 2-drop, 1/1, human rogue ally. Whenever it or another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. This is especially handy in multiplayer games of Modern. I also run 3 Blood Artist, which is a 2-drop, 0/1 vampire creature that whenever it or another creature dies, including your opponents, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. These are more handy in one-on-one games of Modern, but they are very good nonetheless. Next, I will be doing my 3-drops for this deck. I run 4 Weaponcraft Enthusiast. This is a 3-drop Aetherborn Artificer, a 0/1 that has the ability Fabricate 2. So when it ETBs, you have the choice of either giving it 2 +1/+1 counters and making it into a 2/3, or you can create 2 1/1 servo creature tokens. And these tokens are great sacrifice, not outlets per se, but great sacrifice dorks, because you're not going to be missing them if they die. They also make good chump blockers. It's your choice entirely what you do with them, but either way, 3 mana for 3 bodies on board. Always a good idea. I run 2 Nissa, Voice of Zendikar. This is a 3-drop version of Nissa from the Oath of the Gatewatch set, and her abilities include +1 to create a plant token, -2 to give every creature you control a +1/+1 counter, and -7 so that you can gain X life and draw X cards, where X is the number of lands you control. So you have a bunch of land on the battlefield, you have your creatures set up, but you're not where you need to be yet, you need some more cards. She's a good way to go ahead and get the cards you need to finish off the game, especially when you get into those grindy, stalematey type games. I run 2 Yahenni, Undying Partisan. She is a 3-drop 2/2 legendary creature, Aetherborn Vampire, with haste. She has the ability that she can sacrifice a creature and gain indestructible until end of turn, and whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you put a +1/+1 counter on her. Also, I am running 2 Bontu the Glorified, the Black God from Amonkhet. She is a 3-drop 4/6 legendary creature god with menace and indestructible. She cannot attack or block unless a creature has died this turn. And it says a creature under your control, so you have to be very careful about that. A creature you controlled had to have died this turn for her to attack or block, which is fine. She has her own sacrifice ability, which costs 2 mana, 1 black and a colorless. Sacrifice a creature other than her, scry 1, and then each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So it's like an odd combination between Viscera Seer and Zulaport Cutthroat, but it costs 2 mana to do every time. So that's not too bad. And then finally, for my 3-drops, I run 1 copy of Catacomb Sifter, which is a 3-drop Eldrazi drone with power and toughness of 2/3, and when it enters the battlefield, you create 1 1/1 Eldrazi Scion creature token that has sacrifice this creature, add 1 colorless to your mana pool. Also, whenever another creature you control dies, you scry 1. Which creates a really good combo in this deck to make it a lot easier to find the cards you need. And finally, I have my 4-drops. I run 3 Smothering Abomination, which is a 4-drop 4/3 flying, and it has at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature. Whenever you sacrifice a creature, draw a card. I also have 2 Murderous Redcaps. This is the infinite combo with Melira Sylvok Outcast. Melira says that you cannot have -1/-1 counters placed on creatures you control. Murderous Redcap has Persist. When it dies, if it had no -1/-1 counters, it is returned to the battlefield with a -1/-1 counter on it. Now, that being the case, it has to be on the battlefield in order for a -1/-1 counter to be placed on it. That makes it where Melira keeps the -1/-1 counter from being placed on it altogether. So you can sacrifice it an infinite number of times, and every time you do, it re-enters the battlefield. So its own ability allows it to deal damage equal to its power to a target creature or player when it ETBs. So every time you kill it, it comes back, you deal 2 damage to that player, and then you kill it again, it comes back, 2 damage, kill it, comes back again, so on and so forth. Infinite damage. Also, if that's not the only thing, let's say they have an ability that's prevented all damage that can be dealt by creatures to them this turn, that is a possibility, and it is a thing. I've ran into this before. All you have to do is have 1 Zulaport Cutthroat on the battlefield, or 1 Blood Artist, and then it's infinite life loss that cannot be prevented. So it still works. Next, I have 1 Collected Company. That's all I've ever needed in this deck. It doesn't come around very often, but when it does, it is helpful. It's just not helpful enough that I feel the need to run more. It usually hits at least 1 Weaponcraft Enthusiast, and sometimes it'll hit another 3-drop, but most of the time it will inevitably find a Viscera Seer or the Bloodthrone Vampire. I cannot remember many occasions where this has not found the Bloodthrone Vampire. So I don't really find it as useful as most would. And last but not least, I have my lands. So, starting with the 1 most utility land I have, I only have 1 in the deck, because that's all it ever really needs, and that's Westvale Abbey. It only taps to add a colorless mana. But you can pay 5 mana, tap it, and pay 5 life, and you create a 1/1 creature token. Okay, that doesn't seem very significant, but when you consider its 3rd ability, which is pay 5 mana, tap it, sacrifice 5 creatures, and then you get to transform it, what it transforms into is a much better card for this type of deck, because this can help you get in a lot more direct damage early on, which is Ormondal the Profane Prince. Legendary creature, demon, flying, lifelink, indestructible, and haste. It is a 9/7 for its base power and toughness. Now yes, it still dies to Path to Exile. I have been told this too many times to count, but not all decks are going to be running Path to Exile, and if they are, Ormondal just dies. It's not that big of a loss, ultimately, because he's the only creature in the whole deck that's really worth Path to Exiling anyway. Otherwise, you're just going to get more copies of them, or basic lands, and either way, it helps you out. So, then I run 4 Windswept Heaths. These are the only fetch lands I run in the deck. I know I don't run white, I don't need white, but it helps me find a forest, and I can't afford Verdant Catacombs. It's that simple. So, it helps to cut down the price of this deck by a lot. Most people that would be running Verdant Catacombs already had them, or have an insane amount of money to buy them. I, on the other hand, do not. Next, I have Woodland Cemetery. This is a buddy land. When it enters the battlefield, it checks to see if you control a forest or a swamp. If you control one of them, it enters untapped. If you don't, it enters tapped. So it's optimal to at least have 1 on the battlefield before playing these, if at all possible. But, you know how card draws go. Sometimes you don't have a choice. I run 3 Overgrown Tombs. The Overgrown Tomb, of course, is the shock land that has been featured in every Ravnica set known thus far. It has ETB, deal you 2 damage, enters untapped, or enters tapped and deals you no damage, but it counts as both a swamp and a forest at the same time. So you can search these out with Windswept Heath. I run 3 Llanowar Waste. They are the green-black pain land. They come in handy when you are in a pinch and you need a green or black mana, but I don't always use them. And then I run 3 Blooming Marsh. Blooming Marsh is the fast land from Kaladesh. It ETBs as long as you control 2 or fewer other lands. And then I run 4 basic lands, which is 2 swamps and 2 forests. And that's my deck. It's pretty straightforward. It is green-black sacrifice. It's pretty much all you need to know about it. You are going to play your creatures. You're going to play creatures that get you more creatures. Then you're going to play creatures that feed off of your creatures dying, so that you can reach your ultimate goal of killing your opponent, whether attacking with your creatures, or forcing them to block your creatures, or blocking with your creatures. It really doesn't matter. This deck is very versatile. However you want to kill your creatures, whether it be sacrificing them, attacking into them, or letting them attack into you and you blocking, it usually ends up working out to the way of they die by life loss. Not damage most of the time, but life loss. I was fighting a mono green stompy deck before with this deck. I have fought goblins with this deck. I have fought boggles with this deck. It usually dies to boggles. It has about a 50-50 chance against goblins. But it almost always dies to Tron. I have not been able to find a good way to get this deck to work well against Tron yet. It's very hard to work around like a turn 4 or turn 5 Ulamog. The only way that I've ever been able to do it was to infinite combo in response to their Ulamog. And that was very difficult. It was a turn 3 Murderous Redcap, and I have Cryptolith Rite on the battlefield. Then turn 4, I was able to Collected Company into a Malira and one of my sacrifice outlets. So I was able to kill him with infinite damage in response to him casting an Ulamog. That was the only way that I found to kill Tron with this deck effectively. Also, if you are playing against other top tier decks, it runs into a few problems with just speed. This deck is designed to take it into the long game by going wide and then slowly whittling itself down while whittling your opponent down with it. If your opponent is going to be swinging, 15 or 20 damage by turn 3, this deck is probably going to have a few problems. Now, a fun mix-up with this deck is definitely when you play against Living End. It is so interesting to see the deck's mechanics with Living End, because you have all your creatures on the battlefield, but then they can Living End. When they do, you then have the ability to sacrifice all of your creatures, get all the effects of the sacrificed creatures, they go to the graveyard, and then get them back when the Living End goes off. And they only get whatever they had in their graveyard already. It just creates an interesting mechanic because they think, oh yeah, I'm going to do great, this is awesome, right? And then they get their big 4/4s and you have just a wall of 1/1s and 2/2s, but yours have a lot more mechanics and interactability with them. So, that is my deck, and I can feature the sideboard, but there's nothing very special against it. It's just a few mechanic cards against boggles, realistically. I have one copy of Natural Obsolence. It's simply put target artifact on the bottom of its owner's library. I would put that in there because I felt like there would be more Paradox Engine decks in Modern than what I've seen. Back to Nature to work with boggles. Another Bloodthrone Vampire just in case I need another sacrifice outlet. I run one Merciless Executioner. It can also be a Fleshbag Marauder, or any creature with a similar effect that ETBs and each player sacrifices a creature. This card also gets around Lifeline of Sanctity, because it doesn't target a player, it doesn't target each player, it just simply says each player. So it becomes very handy in the long run. I also run 1 to the Slaughter, which is a target player has to sacrifice a creature or a planeswalker, and if you have Delirium, they have to sacrifice one of both if they have it. I run a 4th Tragic Slip in the sideboard, just in case I need the extra removal, which sometimes I do. And to speed up the deck a little bit, sometimes I run a Flesh Eater Imp. It's a 4-drop, 2/2 flying infect. With sacrifice a creature, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. It's just a way to speed up the deck's effectiveness a little bit if you absolutely have to. And then I run 2 Volduran Pariah. It's a 5-drop flying vampire. It's a 3/3, and it has a madness cost of 3, so if you ever have to discard it, you can cast it for 3 black mana instead. Sacrifice 3 creatures, you transform her. She transforms into Abolisher of Bloodlines, which is a 6/5 flying Eldrazi vampire. With when this creature transforms into Abolisher of Bloodlines, target opponent sacrifices 3 creatures. So nothing's real special, but it does come in handy. And last but not least, I would like to feature a friend of mine's creation. It is a Bone Splinters Magic card Abacus. He did a great job with it. I am really impressed with this counter. It is foil, and it is one of my favorite cards for Modern and for this type of deck. I just didn't get to play it in this deck because there wasn't room. Sorcery speed is not that great. But, as you can see, I can go up to 59 life with this, or as low as 0, as any good Magic player's life counter needs to be. And he does these by himself with a blade kit and the cards that the person who wants them requests him to use. If he doesn't have them right away, he tries his best to find them. He tries to use only commons and uncommons, but if someone wanted to donate the cards to him that would make the rares become available to him, he would do those as well. So, thank you for watching, and if you would ever like to have one of these, leave a comment below, and I will try my best to get back to you in a timely manner, and private message you with the details on how to contact him if you'd like one. I think currently he's only doing local, but if you are willing to pay shipping, I'm sure he'd be able to ship it to you. Alright, thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you enjoyed the deck. If you have any comments, suggestions, ways to make it faster or better against Tron, I'm all ears, I promise. And if you ever want to see any more Magic, for sure, just let me know, and I will start doing some of my commander decks as well, such as Unesh, Cryosphinx Sovereign. Thanks for watching. Bye.